Hello everyone, today we're going to take a look at tips to writing the perfect CAPE Module 1 essay. This has been adapted from the CXC report. So we're going to have a look at the main point and the writer's purpose first. Next we're going to take a look at language strategies. Then we'll take a brief look at how to analyze within your essay, how to organize your essay, and encouragement for you to watch the sister video for additional information. Taking a deeper look at the main point and the writer's purpose is very important. It's really necessary for you to understand the difference between the two. Do not get them confused and do not confuse how they are to be stated. Also, make sure that you are developing the idea behind the main point fully and that you do not state the incorrect writer's purpose, which are common errors that students will make. If you can understand and identify these concepts, then you are on your way to satisfying 1/3 of the essay requirements. According to the CXC report, students are getting confused between the writer's main point and the writer's purpose. In order to make sure that you are developing this properly, make sure that you are writing sufficient information when you're answering the questions. Here are some tips for distinguishing the main idea and understanding the writer's purpose, intention, and intent. So the main point or the main idea is what the writer is really writing about. This is the idea that's coming out from what you're reading. It could be one sentence if it's a short passage, but the longer the passage is, the more likely that you're going to need 2 or 3 separate sentences in order to fully capture the main point or idea. This is typically going to include a main point, yes, but also what does the writer think of this main point, and how has the writer concluded that we should respond to this main point. So that may or may not be contained in the passage, but it is your responsibility to be able to read the passage and extract these critical ideas. To correctly state the main point, you should make sure that you are answering it correctly. The main point is never stated by using a verb. It's never going to be the main point of this passage is to inform. No. If you start off like that, then everything that follows will be considered incorrect and you're not going to get points for that answer. The main point or the main idea is never to do something. The main point is that students have a problem answering the Module 1 essay. This is how it would be expressed. It's not expressed in terms of an action. The writer's purpose or intent is very critical. All writers write with a purpose or an intent in mind, and really mainly writers want to shift the reader's point of view from point A to point B. So how do you identify this? Well, or how do you state this when you're writing your essay? It is always stated as a verb. It is what the writer wants to happen as a result of your reading the piece. So you're going to go ahead and say that the writer wants to inform the reader of, to entertain the reader, to criticize, to argue that, or to convince or persuade readers that. So these are the statements, these are the verb action statements that go along with, for example, to inform the reader, meaning that it was an expository piece, or to convince, persuade readers means that it is a persuasive piece. So it is so important for you to understand the main idea, and also to recognize that organizational strategies can be mixed within a writing, within a piece of writing. So there's going to be one controlling organizational strategy which relates to the main purpose, and then there may be supplemental or supporting strategies that the writer will use, but those are not to be confused. You have got to separate and clearly understand what the main purpose is, separate from supporting strategies that they may use. What are the language strategies that a writer may use? The next two-thirds of your essay relies on you being able to correctly identify the strategies, techniques, devices that the writer has employed to achieve the main point or the main idea and to support his purpose or intent. This could include the tone of his writing, and the tone is the attitude that the author takes towards the topic that he or she is writing about. One easy way for you to understand tone is to ask, what attitude did I get from the reading of the author's words? You're always going to use adjectives to describe the tone. The tone is something that could be humorous, mysterious, creepy, straightforward, that type of thing. There are many examples of how tone could be represented. I want you to be very, very careful when you describe the author's tone, because the author can use different tones at different points in his writing, and he may not have one overarching tone that he maintains throughout the piece. So if you use the tone as a strategy or a technique, it is critical that first of all you're identifying the tone in the section or the example that you give, and that the tone you have selected actually matches what the writer is saying. So to say this more specifically, using tone can be a very dangerous road to go down, because unless you are confident in your knowledge of tone, you could identify the incorrect tone, or if you don't support it correctly, you might lose marks. Organizational strategies and language techniques are fully explained in the PowerPoint that is posted to the Google Classroom. So I'm going to invite you to go into the PowerPoint that speaks to the definitions of discourse strategies in order for you to understand the complete array of organizational strategies and language techniques that are employed by a writer or can be employed by a writer. But these are a few examples, and you should know the difference between them so that when you are writing a paragraph on organizational strategies, you are not mixing language techniques with organizational strategies. Once you have identified a strategy or a technique, you have to use the PEE method to describe them, to discuss it. If you don't use a PEE method, you are going to lose points. You can watch this video, which has been posted on YouTube, and the link is in Google Classroom. You must write about the effectiveness of the device. In other words, how does this device add to the piece? How does it appeal to the senses and therefore to the reader's understanding of the piece? And even more importantly, how does this aid the author in achieving his purpose? And how does it expand on the main point of the passage? Effectiveness can also be measured by asking yourself, do the strategies chosen by the author really match his or her purpose? An example of effectiveness for you. Say, for example, that the author has used historical data. Then you will be able to say the author used historical data to add credibility to his piece. And we know this because the reader can go back in and check the references that he has quoted or cited in his piece. Also, you could say that the author has used a conversational tone, and this would be identified through anecdotes or the use of personal pronouns, which allow the reader to be drawn into the piece and to feel as if the writer is striving to make you feel comfortable with reading this piece. Now, when you are writing your points, so say you're making your point on um, organizational strategies, and you have cited that historical data is a type of organizational strategy that the writer has used. I do not want you to go and give me an example, a definition of what historical data is. I want you to take the example from the passage that demonstrates historical data, but do not give me a definition. I don't need that. That's wasting your precious words. Having given me the example, then make sure that you present this by placing it in quotation marks from the passage and explain why you believe that the writer has used this strategy or this technique. Organizing your essay is critical. And organizing here is used differently from the organizational strategies that we were talking about before. This is how you are going to now present your information when you're writing your CAPE essay. It must have a structure. And in order for you to ensure that you are including all the elements, you must create a sentence outline before you begin to write. Too many times you're on the right path. You have the information that you want to relay to the reader, but you have forgotten to include all of the points in your essay. If you do not write a sentence outline before you start to write, if you just do freestyle writing, you're going to leave yourself open to forgetting elements that are required to be included in your essay. Especially since you will be writing under pressure, you must create that sentence outline before you start writing. So what should your essay look like? First point is that your essay should be 500 words, and I'm expecting you to stay within that 500 word limit. The reason 500 words is your limit is because we know that if you say anything more than 500 words, you're being verbose, and we want you to get to the point. So, an essay of this nature is going to include the introduction, which we speak about in the other video, the body, the conclusion, and really to help us to know that you're a sophisticated writer, you're going to include several transitional words that help to lead us, to guide the flow of your essay. So transitional words will be used between your paragraphs and also between your sentences. And of course, your analysis of what the writer has said. Your sentence outline should briefly outline the elements of your essay. So the first thing you should do is write down how many paragraphs you intend to have in this essay. If the essay question says, list 3 organizational strategies, 3 language techniques, and speak about validity, that means that there are 3 paragraphs that you're going to create right there. One for organizational strategies, one for language techniques, and one to discuss validity. Having said that, you're not going to discuss the essay in terms of how the author has presented the information. So it's not going to be following the author's paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and paragraph 3. That is not the purpose here. Your essay must follow the structure required by the question that you have been asked. If you follow that structure, it will read sensibly. But if you try to follow and analyze what the writer has said according to his paragraphs, it is not going to flow correctly, and the reader is going to have a hard time figuring out exactly what you mean. So list the number of paragraphs that you will be writing about. Your first paragraph, of course, is going to be an intro, and the final paragraph is going to be a conclusion. So for example, in paragraph 2, you intend to speak about organizational strategies. Then under paragraph 2, you're going to write point number 1, point number 2, and point number 3, because you've been requested to give 3 organizational strategies. You are going to read through the passage and select the 3 organizational strategies you intend to write about and write them down beside 1, 2, and 3. And right there, you know that this is the starting point of your checklist. Now, you know you need to do the PEE for each point. So make sure that beside each one of your org strategies, you have the letters P, E, and E, so that when you begin writing, as soon as you make the point, you go back and check it off. You make the example, you go back and check it off, and you make the explanation, you go back and check it off. In that way, as you're checking it off, you are not opening up yourself to forgetting elements that are required. You are making sure that you are completing the discussion that is required for you to get an A. When you've finished writing, complete the PE for all the points that you've intended to write about. Read it over, check for grammar, check for punctuation, and then you should have a perfect essay. And that is the end of how to write an excellent CAPE essay. Thank you very much for listening. Good luck.